Less than I thought. All right. So I'm gonna have to keep this pretty quick. Um, yeah, I thought I'd make this one because I woke up. I don't read the news. I don't watch the news, but I check the headlines just to see what sort of bullshit nonsense they're trying to sell today. And there's all this shit where you've got Democrats from Congress screaming that we need to send fighter jets to Ukraine, and dementia Joe Biden's talking about fucking nuclear Armageddon and all this bullshit, and then there's still, both parties of warmonger pussies, couldn't fight their way out of wet paper bags. They're still talking about, oh, we might have to fight China and Russia at the same time. And then too, something that came across my YouTube feed was clips from Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, and that whole movie. It's an interesting, mental journey. He makes one of those action movies like every 3 months, and they kind of blur together. But it's an interesting story, and so basically the premise of that movie is there's like this fucking alien invasion, and the alien transport ships look like meteors when they're coming in. The thing hits Germany and it spreads across Europe. Um, it basically it stops when it gets to Russia. The Russians are containing them, and then they can't cross the English Channel. So basically, there's this whole, it's like a World War II nostalgia, copycat thing where the Allies are in England and they've got to invade the beaches of Normandy, to fight the aliens, and it's a little cheesy like that, but that's an interesting thing with the baby boom, or these studio heads. They're most of the politicians right now. That generation, when it comes to people in power, they have very little imagination. So everything is about recreating the New Deal, Great Depression, and World War II. So yeah, interesting little factors in that movie. So I was watching that, and then it's the aliens are fighting this like two-front war, kind of like the Third Reich during World War II. So you get the Allies coming from England, and then they talk about the Chinese-Russian alliance that's fighting the Eastern Front in Eastern Europe. So I thought that was interesting. So anyway, that's some predictive programming for this, fake alien invasion that some people would like to pull off. And then, you've got this thing with the Russians and Chinese, allying, which has looked like for years, like with the BRICS, they've wanted to do. So that's selling a paranoid fantasy, but it injects this alien factor where the British and the Americans and their minions in Western Europe are now on the side of the Russians and the Chinese, because you've got this otherworldly threat. Like Ronald Reagan said, "Wow, wouldn't that be great if we had it?" So a lot of dark paranoid fantasies being sold to us right now. And there's just so many of them. There's like a food system collapse, dark fantasy. There's like a race war, dark fantasy. What else is there? There's the nuclear thing, of course. There's the FEMA camp, dark fantasy. There's all kinds of shit, right? And and I'm gonna say something that I'm continually saying, but it needs to be said because we need to be reminded. Armageddons, FEMA camps, wars with China and Russia, alien invasions, food shortage, starvation, all that stuff. It's actually easier than dealing with your feelings. It's actually easier than dealing with the way you feel. It's easier than sitting down with yourself and being honest about What do you want from life, and what have you not given yourself in your life? Where have you kept yourself trapped, and how is this making you miserable? And then, very importantly, why is it making you seek a dark fantasy so that you can get out of the way you feel? Okay? You know, it's like I've said it before. Military heroes overwhelmingly retire to bar stools into a bottle. That's the majority of what happens, you know. Especially in an imperial military, the militaries are big alcohol cultures because deep down, at the very least, deep down, people know they're doing shit that's just, it shouldn't be done. You know, the empire just abuses resource-rich countries when they don't give them what they want. So there's this need to escape from feelings. You know, and it's like I say, a lot of, you know, the majority of men will deny they have feelings. Women will admit they have them, but they talk and think circles around them, and they create conspiracy theories about what they're feeling because it's also scary for them. And this is why, you know, women have another year or two on their statistical life expectancies. They are acknowledging they have feelings, but they don't really want to acknowledge the true ones. So they acknowledge they don't deny their existence, but they have great difficulty as well, because they're also human. So there are just so many ways, and there are all these temptations, things you can get diverted with to not deal with the way you feel, and you know, and not deal with parts of your life that you want to be different. So, you know, they sell junk food, cigarettes, chewing tobacco, alcohol, coffee, lottery tickets on every street corner. There's worlds of washing prescription and illegal drugs. You know, this is a big thing with the push for legalizing marijuana. I don't think it should be prohibited, but I think as a habit and a lifestyle, it's an escape. It's an escape. People can escape from their emotions. So, you know, people shop and they buy things and they stockpile things, and you know, the news is a way to avoid how you feel. You know, and then it's like we have to prepare for hard times, but that can be, you know, that can be an escape too. So there's so many ways. There's so many little, you know, addictions people can crawl into. You know, the news is an addiction because you can get angry at people or a whole party, and you can do this, and so you can never deal with the way you feel. I know a lot of people like this. That's why politics is such a religion. Television's a god, you know. So yeah. So there's a lot of crazy looking shit going on, and the powers that be want us to be addicted to these dark paranoid fantasies, these Armageddon fantasies, so that we never empower ourselves. So, you know, my whole point is, you know what's going on, take note of it, but don't invest your energy into it. Because to me, you know, the 2020s, it's a hall of mirrors. It's a bunch of illusions, you know, and I love the example of Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee, where he, you know, at the end of the movie, he's got to do the boss fight, and the guy leads him into a hall of mirrors as Bruce Lee's pursuing him, and, you know, every time the guy comes out from behind cover to, you know, scratch him with the big claw that he's wearing on his hand, he sees him all around him because he's in all these mirrors and they're reflecting the images back and forth. And he remembers his teacher's advice from the beginning of the film. And the teacher says, the enemy only has illusions. Destroy the illusion and you will destroy your enemy. So Bruce Lee starts to punch out all of the mirrors, and basically the guy's powerless, and he kicks his ass. He puts him down for good. So what that was all about was basically there's a big element in that symbolism in that movie where you have to you need boundaries. You need healthy boundaries. You need to know. You need to stop identifying with your tormentors. You need to know where they end and you begin, and vice versa. We have a major problem in this world with boundaries. It does not benefit political leaders, religious leaders, academic leaders, business leaders, for any of us to have strong, appropriate personal boundaries. They don't want us to know where we end and their sales pitch begins. And speaking of the religious leaders too, it's like this whole Armageddon rapture apocalypse thing. It's an appropriation. It's a corrupted appropriation of much older pagan mythology. Something like Ragnarok from the Norse Germanic tradition. They're not end of the world stories. So you ask most people about Ragnarok, and they're like, "Oh, that's the Viking end of the world story," and it's like, well, it was portrayed that way by the Christians and Christian monks who wrote those Norse Germanic stories down in the Middle Ages, because they corrupted them with Christian overtones. But really, these Ragnarok stories, so-called end of the world stories, they're not about the end of the world. They're about the end of an age and the beginning of a new one, or the end of a way of life and the beginning of a new one. They're about how dispensations of time on earth end and begin. So, the whole book of Revelation story, it's an appropriation and it's a total corruption. But these book of Revelation type stories have programmed us for escapism, because it's much easier to get, to have the La Palma fucking volcano send all the iron sliding into the ocean to turn a third of the ocean into blood, and to have fucking Jesus come rapture you. It's much easier to do that than to actually deal with the way you feel and do the things, give yourself the things that you want in life. It's much harder to do that than it is to just get raptured and have some side care of everything for you. Living your life dealing with your feelings takes the balls. Takes much less balls to go to war, to get raptured, all that happy horse shit. So yeah, so we're programmed to always be on the lookout for the next Armageddon rapture apocalypse. We're not going to get off that easy. The world doesn't end, and this was something made abundantly clear in these pagan mythologies that were stolen and into the book of Revelations, rapture, Armageddon, apocalypse story. The world doesn't end, it just changes, and it ends and begins anew. So the world doesn't end, but the way humans live, ways of life come to an end, and new ways of life begin. And that's what we're in the middle of. That's why we're getting sold all these apocalypse Armageddon stories, is because the people we call the globalists, aka the elite, aka the powers that be, aka the deep state, their way of life is coming to an end. Too many people got way too literate to the way they operate far too quickly. So they're pissing themselves. The plandemic, scamdemic with the needlecraft totally collapsed and fell apart. So they had to ramp up the whole Ukraine thing. And I think Putin is working in collusion with, our fucking clown leaders here in the West. These wars have always been used to cull people, and especially to cull the young male vitality out of societies when economies break, when unemployment gets too high. Because when unemployment gets too high, it generates civil unrest, and people in offices are called to account. So it's just a bunch of bullshit. And everybody knows, every official in the US knows you can't fight Russia and China at the same time. It's just a dark paranoid fantasy people want you to believe. So just remember that through all this, no matter how crazy it looks. It's an act of desperation. And they want you to be the same type of paranoid they are. They want you to buy into the fear. They want you to be paralyzed with fear. And there's nothing intelligent or heroic about being paralyzed with fear. So remember that. And remember, this decade, nothing is going to be as bad as it looks. You may be inconvenienced, but nothing is going to be as bad as it looks. All right, so I have an appointment here. I'm going to end it there, but it's my ramble for the day. Have a nice one.